Hello, and welcome to the first annual, first weekly episode of the Linux Newscast. Today is August the 24th, 2022. The time on the Eastern Seaboard is 1947, or in standard time, that would be, in the standard 12-hour clock, that would be 7:47 p.m. So, first thing we have is the kernel report. There have been a couple major updates recently to the Linux kernel. Out of 9to5linux.com, the Linux kernel 5.18 has officially reached end of life. This was written by Marius Nestor. All of the links to the articles I'm about to read and talk about are in the comment section down below. Description down below, I'm sorry. Released at the end of May 2022, Linux kernel 5.18 is yet another one of our more short-lived kernel series. It introduced new features like support for user events and tracing systems, support for AMD's host system management port function, and support for 64-bit integrity checksums on NVMe devices, amongst other things. Renowned kernel developer Greg Crower-Hartman announced about 3 days ago that the release of Linux kernel 5.18.19, which appears to be a very small patch that only includes about 6 changes. But what's most important about the message, and I'm going to put the message up right about here. I'm getting used to the camera angles, I'm sorry. I'm going to put the message right about here. It says that I'm announcing the release of the 5.19 kernel. Note that this is the last 5.18.y kernel to be released. This branch is now end of life. Please move to 5.19.y at this point in time. He said in a mailing list announcement. That announcement will be linked in the article if you get a chance to read it. Now, as you can see, users are now urged to upgrade to the Linux 5.19 kernel series, which is updated today to 5.19.3. Distribution maintainers and users who would like to compile their own kernels can go grab it over at kernel.org. There will be a link in the description below. But please keep in mind that this is also a short-lived branch that will probably be supported until the end of October of this year. Now, several popular rolling release distributions already run Linux kernel 5.19. This includes Arch Linux and OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. While Ubuntu users can easily install 5.19 from the Ubuntu kernel mainline PPA. If you don't want to upgrade your kernel every few months, you have the option to just stick with a long-term support branch such as Linux 5.15 LTS. I believe there's more than just that, but for the time being, that's what I have the resources to say. Now, also, following up this announcement, 2 weeks have passed since the release of 5.19, which we talked about earlier. Since it is the last kernel in the 5.x series, it is opening the merge window for Linux kernel 6.0. Linus Torvalds has released a release candidate for 6.0, and it is a milestone, and the first release candidate is ready for testers and bleeding edge users who want an early taste of what's about to be included in the final release, which is predicted to be in early October 22, hence why 5.19 would be becoming unsupported. According to Torvalds, all the big changes have been merged, and the Linux kernel 6.0 looks to be another fairly sizable release with another great set of improvements for the AMD GPU users. About 60% of the release is new and updated drivers for better hardware support, but there are also architecture updates, file systems, and tooling improvements, as well as random changes all over for performance boost. Now, again, as I said, the final 6.0 kernel release is expected in early October, so either on the 2nd or the 9th. We don't have a complete date yet. It will be announced by Torvalds. Until then, if you want to take the upcoming 6.0 series for a test drive, you can pick that up again from kernel.org. I'll have the specific kernel linked in the description. However, please keep in mind that this is pre-release, so it would be smart not to put this on your production machine, just to make sure everything's stable and before, because we don't know how stable it is. It's pre-release. It's still being actively developed. It hasn't been truly published out for the public yet. It's more of just a beta testing thing. So if you're gonna do anything with that, I do it in a virtual machine or a virtual machine or just a different computer that you don't use very often. I would also expect that would soon come to Ubuntu and all the major distributions, except for maybe Debian, because they generally hold releases back pretty far, but we'll see what happens there. But we do know that it would probably be an automatic update, because it is a major release. Alright, next up we have a kernel exploit alert. This won't happen very often, hopefully, out of the Black Hat 22 Cybersecurity 2022 Cybersecurity Conference. eSecurityPlanet.com originally reported on this. A new kernel exploitation called Dirty Cred was revealed at last week's Black Hat Security Conference. A PhD student and a team of researchers worked on an alternative approach to the infamous Dirty Pipe vulnerability, which you may or may not know affected Linux kernel versions 8 or later. Dirty Pipe is a major flaw which allowed attackers to elevate least privilege accounts to the maximum level by exploiting the way the kernel uses pipes to pass data. Now, this is sort of the same thing, but it just goes based on the Linux kernel credentials. Now, credentials could be like generally it's like groups and elevation with a privilege and such. Just a couple more things about that. It can apply to describe the approach as a generic method that can even apply to containers and empower different bugs to be Dirty Pipe-like. Indeed, the generated exploit can work on different kernels and Arch without code, and architecture without a code change. They noted it should be noted that the proof of concept is still in progress, even though it is still even if it is already working in specific conditions, such as a specific vulnerability. The vulnerability, which originally caused Dirty Pipe in 2021, has been patched in the Linux kernel, but researchers indicate that the exploit works on most CentOS 8 kernels higher than Linux 4.18.0 and most Ubuntu 20 kernels higher than 5.4.0. And because objects are isolated according to their type and their privileges, the researchers recommend isolating privileged credentials from unprivileged ones using virtual memory to prevent cross-cache attacks. Now, the patch is also available on GitHub. I will link that GitHub below, and consists of isolating task credit using vmalloc, which is virtually contiguous memory. Now we have news from a small-time distro, KOS, an independent distro that is inspired by Arch Linux but not based on Arch Linux. It was released, 22.08 was released. It is here after only 2 months of KOS 2022.06. Just some things about it. It brings a lot of great changes, starting with the implementation of the Pipewire server for handling audio, video streams, and hardware on Linux, as well as the default sound/low-level multimedia framework. Then over here, here, I will also be showing a list of distributions that have been updated, because there were quite a few. I'm just focusing on the smaller independent ones. For those who don't know what KOS is, it is a KDE-oriented GNU/Linux distribution. You're getting all the latest and greatest KDE software with the new ISO release, including the just released KDE Gear 22.08 and KDE Frameworks 5.97, and then it comes with the KDE Plasma 5.25.4 DE and that's all built on Qt 5.15.5. If you want to give a Kha OS Linux on a try on your personal computer, you can download the 22.08 ISO release right now from the official website, again, down below. Kha OS follows a rolling release model just like Arch Linux, so existing users will only need to update their installations to receive the aforementioned goodies by running the command that they would use. It doesn't really say the command, but that's just what I can tell. That's what they just say. Just run the command. That's most the package manager's command for updating. Some software news. LibreOffice, everyone's favorite alternative to Microsoft, has released 7.4. The Document Foundation released 7.4 Community Edition today. This release brings significant improvements across Calc, Writer, and other components, and many bug fixes and filter updates for MS365, and filter updates for MS365. Just before you download it, just a couple things you should know about some more details, I guess. The spreadsheet program Calc gets to support 16,384 columns now, which is actually equal to the ones you can get in Excel. So you would not need to. So there is almost no difference because you have the equal number of rows and columns, and the amount of this, and very similar, if not the same features, just under a different name. At the formula bar, 6 functions were also added for quick access onto Calc, and then a couple minor updates with a couple other minor updates with Calc and Writer that don't necessarily need to be noteworthy. But there is one other thing that I guess that should be mentioned. The common noteworthy features include the built-in WebP image support in LibreOffice. WebP image was developed by Google and is considered by many the next generation image format to be used across the web. Alright. Just some things for those who like to, for streaming services. Crunchyroll, the streaming service for anime and drama, for those that pay attention to that kind of thing. It's been blocking privacy-focused email Tutanota, which is also notably open source. For the official reason that they sent to the Tutanota representatives is that they believe that hackers use their email, and I'm going to go a little bit on a soapbox here, because hackers use, they use Gmail. Just because it says Gmail doesn't mean a hacker doesn't use it. To assume everything that's privacy-based would cause this is ridiculous. Everybody likes their privacy, and hackers aren't the only ones that use this, and everybody uses it. Everybody uses everybody uses email, so everybody's going to have an email that conflicts with an email website that conflicts with other other, maybe a hacker's email address, Gmail, obviously, Yahoo Mail, Hotmail, just to name a few of the most random ones. Outlook, I'm sure, has an issue. So we're just looking, if you would like to complain, you can send a complaint to Crunchyroll to help unblock it, because the pressure of the masses is what generally makes businesses act the most. So just for whoever uses that and uses Tutanota, I wish the best of luck and hope that you can get that unblocked again. Just a couple more things. Gnome as a desktop environment will start to warn you about disabled secure boot. Now, for those who don't entirely know what secure boot is, it is basically a feature that blocks you from from booting from a USB. It does a little bit more than that, but that's what it's meant to do. Because when you first install on Linux on your UEFI computer, which I had to do too, I had to disable secure boot, and I keep it disabled. But you have to disable secure boot because the live USB will refuse to boot with that option enabled. Some mainstream Linux distributions do support secure boot, but it's still very challenging to set up for many other distributions. So just some points on why you might want it if you do fall into the category of a supported distribution. It even though it has been known to take away freedom from users, as it is bundled with proprietary software, so from proprietary firmware. But it has given project to things like Core Boot, which is secure, which is very similar to secure boot, but it is open source and more friendly to the overall user. Especially because I wouldn't want to go through this process I had to look at the process at one point just to see what it was all about. I mean, it's for Arch Linux, it's pretty long and drawn out. So the developer, but because of this and because it is still considered safe, even though it is debatable again, but even though it is considered safe, the Gnome desktop environment developers are preparing to show warnings in Plymouth, which is the boot splash screen, the GDM, so that's the login screen, and the Gnome Control Center. They are planning to put warnings in all of those different places that you'd have secure boot disabled. Alright, then again, there's a guide to how to disable warnings on Gnome that's down below. That is also in part of the same article linked. I will just label them so you know which one's which. Also, Kdenlive 22.08 arrived today. Not today, I believe it was 2 days ago. With some of the most requested features. So just for those unacquainted, Kdenlive is a full-featured, free, and open-source video editor. It's a KDE app that you can use for your hobby and professional work alongside videos for YouTube, Vimeo, and other popular streaming platforms. Now, I personally use OBS Studio alongside Shotcut, which is another FOSS video editor. It's brought in anticipated features with performance improvements and bug fixes. Again, there's a complete list of features down in the description below, and there is a lot of them just looking at this. Okay. Second to last, I believe, Mozilla Firefox 104 has been released. Firefox 104 entered public beta testing at the end of July, during which it offered a long-anticipated feature, which, for those who don't know, and I didn't really know this either, it was the using two-finger horizontal swipe gesture without holding the Alt key to switch between swipe left and right on web pages. Unfortunately, like Firefox 103, 104 is missing this feature in the final release, but it looks like it has been postponed for the next release, 105, and we can only hope that will be included on the next release of Firefox. Then there's some other support. There's some added support for subtitles on Disney Plus and picture and the picture-in-picture feature, along with some other supports for text writing, drawing, and signatures in the built-in PDF viewer. And some web development too. Some web development upgrades and supports have been added. Again, complete list in the article. Then also, Krita 5.1 was released by the Krita Foundation. It is the first major update to the free, open source, and cross-platform digital painting software since 5.0, which was about 8 months ago. It has a couple different changes. The most notable being it has initial support for JPEG XL file format, which is an updated version of the classic JPEG image file format designed to bring wide color gamuts and HDR support to the web. And then, in addition to this support, it also brings support for WebP image formats, and support for Photoshop layered TIFFs, support for PSD fill layers and color labels, and amongst other things. Those that know. I am personally not very familiar with digital painting software. I'm not all that artistic. I prefer programming than I do, more than I prefer painting on a computer. But if that's what you like, then I'm sure that you'd be interested. The article lists everything listed down below. Last thing, the monthly Linux market share report came out from ItsFoss for the month of August. There's just some things from around the web. They compiled a bunch of about 6 different sources for their surveys for the sources to tell us what exactly we have going on in the Linux world. From net market share, it says the current Linux market share is about 1.68% compared to the 6.09% for Mac OS and 91.40 for Windows. Then there's stat counter. Linux occupies 2.76 of the market share compared to the 14.51% by Mac OS and 75.21% for Windows. From W3 Schools, last update was on May 22nd. Linux had a grip on 4.2% of the market share compared to the 9.2% of Mac OS, 70% of Windows. The Steam survey, in terms of desktop gaming, has a market share of 1.23%, compared to 1.74% for Mac OS, and again Windows holding on very tightly to that specific area. It's 93.03%. Then on Statista, which is again another survey platform, the Linux desktop market share was 2.42% when compared to 14.64% for Mac and 76.33% for Windows. And then again, for those who develop, it's again pretty firm hold among the developers who participated in a survey conducted by Stack Overflow. 40.23% of users use Linux-based operating systems for personal use, and 39.89% use them for professional use. Again, every source utilizes a different method of collection, and these are different websites. So same people don't go to the same website, so this is sort of a collection from just around the web. Overall, it looks like Linux as a desktop operating system is popular among developers, and is eventually, just working its way into influencing gamers, especially now with the Steam Deck, and Proton, which has done amazing things as far as I'm concerned for the Linux desktop gaming experience. Then also other consumers and is eventually influencing gamers and other consumers as an alternative operating system. So we are still climbing the charts a little bit, slowly but surely. Hopefully we can get up to where we belong. Now that is everything. Now that I have completely finished, it is 8:10 on the Eastern Seaboard, p.m., 8:10 p.m., 2011, for the 24-hour clock. So I don't have too much to comment on here. I mean, I think just be safe with the kernel exploit alert. I know I'm going to work on patching that. I just pulled these off the internet a couple days ago, and I haven't gotten a chance to hop on my computer since my original since I recorded my previous video, which was 2 days ago, and then I just edited it yesterday. That's why it was released so late. I guess if you'd like to try out KOS, I know I'm going to work on it. I just run a VM, see what it's like. I've been meaning to, actually. I was looking on the distro tree, which I can link down below for those unfamiliar. It is basically a PNG of the Linux timeline, and it's gargantuan. It's really big. From 1991, down to now, and it just shows a timeline of Linux distributions. It's interesting for all those who believe themselves historians. Again, please, if you would like, you can complain to Crunchyroll about not being able to use their service with a privacy-focused email address. I completely understand. In terms of what else you can use, I'd imagine that you can use, a temp mail if you don't want to get rid of it, or just sign up for a Google account that you never use or something, and just run it through there. For secure boot, I don't have much to say about that. I don't use Gnome. I use a window manager, specifically BSBWM. So this doesn't really apply to me. Kdenlive, I don't use it, but it seems like a lot of the features that the community's been looking for have been updated, so that's good to note. And Firefox, I already installed it. I use Arch. I installed it like 5 minutes ago when I updated my system. And Krita, I don't really use Krita, as I mentioned earlier, but for those that do, make sure to pick up that update. And that's all I have. That was just a recap. I'd just like to finish it up. So thank you very much for tuning in to this week's Linux Newscast, and I will hope to see you soon on one of my other videos, or just around the internet, depending on how active I am. It's been real. Bye.